Absolute banger. Coming up this weekend, UFC 271. It's the co-main event between the former title challenger, both fully and interim, Derrick Lewis, fighting at home against one Bam Bam Tai Tuivasa. And for Tai Tuivasa, absolute career resurgence. It feels like something that we've said before for Derrick Lewis once, twice, three times. But for Tai Tuivasa, he was on a tidy little 3-fight losing streak, and now all of a sudden, 4-fight win streak, wins over Stefan Struve, Harry Hunsucker, Greg Hardy, and his last time out over Augusto Sakai, where he showed good clinch control as well as range finding abilities. And listen, Tuivasa's really switched it up. And the thing that surprised me getting ready for this fight was the fact that I figured, oh, okay, we're at Lions High Performance Center again in Australia. We're rocking, we're rolling, hanging out with the crew. No. The weird thing about Tuivasa was the fact that he had the fight before Augusto Sakai, where he picks up a really nice win over Greg Hardy. But then the way back to Australia was difficult, so he made himself a team in Abu Dhabi. And that team was able to get him the win against Augusto Sakai, where he looked like a relatively fresh fighter. Like, he added some wrinkles into his game.
Augusto Sakai certainly didn't.
Augusto Sakai regressed. That much is true. So I really tried to find interviews, and I saw one from December. He's talking about being in Abu Dhabi, and then I pieced it together. Well, his last fight was in December. So then I found one in early January after the fight where he's talking to Ariel Helwani on the MMA Hour. And he's back in Abu Dhabi, and the whole camp's focused around Tai. So I think that without those distractions, that can be a great thing for him. So it's interesting that way. Now, he was drinking beer in the interview, which it is what it is, especially for a heavyweight. But for Tuivasa, I mean, this has been really, really impressive. I mean, from almost being out of the UFC, the rumors that he was cut and whatnot, to being on this win streak, it's amazing. For Derrick Lewis, again, you got to build yourself back up after Cormier. You pick up some big wins. I mean, hell, he beat Francis Ngannou. You can never take that one away from him. He loses to Cyril Gane at home in Houston. And then his last time out in December, fights another prospect in Chris Daukaus and is able to get the win. That one in Vegas. The weirdest part for me, Matt, before I hand it off to you, and there's a lot of different ways to go about this, but for Derrick Lewis, he's fought at home in Houston before. He's fought in Texas before, but specifically in Houston, he's 5-1. The one loss is to Cyril Gane. He went on to the MMA Hour after that fight and was saying to Ariel Helwani, I don't even want to experience that ever again. It was too much pressure. Too much pressure, too much. And then he followed it up by saying, to the point I was really calling people up. Let me get some weed off them so I can relax my nerves on the fight day. It was too much pressure. Weird.
I don't know what the laws around that are in Texas.
Because this fight's going to be in Houston as well. So I just wonder how that plays in. Because he was able to win 5 fights in a row in Houston. The last of which I believe was Ilir Latifi, which was a close enough fight. And then he had that title fight against Gane. But we've seen that out of Lewis, where in some fights, it's just like, that's the way it is.
I'm going to sound like a dick right now, but fighter makes excuse after loss. It happened. Here's the thing about Derrick Lewis. He is going to lose very badly every now and then. Like against Mark Hunt, he looked terrible. He looked like his back broke 6 times in that fight. Then he got TKO'd by a guy who was like 41 years old. And it was a very, very bad performance. And that's one of those like career, maybe not altering, but career shifting performances. Because it's like, okay, you got the big opportunity, but you look that bad. Are you ever going to build yourself back up? And I do like what you said. He's had that opportunity and he has been able to build himself back up. Like Derrick Lewis to me is like Joel Embiid. Like we had a lot of promise in him. Yeah, he failed here and there, but like, at least he works really hard and tries to get better and doesn't make excuses for it. And that's what you like to see. Like, in MMA, all we can ask fighters to do is just try to be better, fight in and fight out. And there's not an ounce of me that thinks Derrick Lewis doesn't try to be a better fighter in between every single fight, because even at 37 years of age, his birthday is
this week,
tomorrow, then it should be like he's got an improved wrestling game. He has a better gas tank at this stage of his career. Like there are parts of his game that you can directly point to and say those things have improved. With Tai Tuivasa, it's interesting because to me, and maybe you have seen something different, I still feel like he does a lot of the same stuff. It's a make or miss league with Tai Tuivasa in my mind. To me, I just feel like if he lands the shot, it's going to look great. But he does, like, for being such a technical striker, he does leave himself very open on his power punches. And he does wing massive hooks to the point where if he does miss one of those big hooks and leaves himself overextended against a guy like Derrick Lewis, that's when Lewis throws one of those big uppercuts up the middle, gets you up against the cage, and then just starts bombing on you. So I think this could be a weird fight because A, it's heavyweights and these guys are both knockout artists. So like Tai Tuivasa could win via knockout 3 seconds in. Same thing vice versa. I really do think Derrick Lewis is by far the more skilled fighter in this one.
It's really weird. So I mean, for Tuivasa, the trouble, and I guess the good part about it, is that he was so wild. And that's what got him to the dance. That's what got UFC fans behind him. The Shui was cool, and then he started losing because he was overextending himself. And I mean, even go back to the JDS fight. There's points in that fight where he totally overextends. He like ends up down on a knee. JDS lets him back up to fight some more.
And I know you're going to get to this with him training his camp, but he did do it against Sakai too.
No, I mean, if you do look at it, like the last 4 fights, again, he knocks out Stefan Struve in the fight, then he jumps on the cage, hits him with his heel, and knocks him out again. People kind of forget about that. Knocks out Harry Hunsucker, who's done in the UFC. He's 0-2, knockout losses. Beats Greg Hardy by knockout in one of those ones where Greg Hardy felt it coming on.
He got hurt, though, and that's the thing that I think we should bring up.
He got hurt, and then he goes out there, and I really did like the fight against Sakai, and this is the reason why. It actually doesn't have anything to do with the striking. I'm really surprised that in the clinch work, Augusto Sakai wasn't able to really do anything. And that is a part where Augusto Sakai, you might not believe me, go back a few years ago, Augusto Sakai used to have really, really good clinch work. Not just like when Blagoy's taking him down and he grabs the fence a few times. No, Augusto Sakai, once upon a time, had really good clinch work. And in the fight against Tai Tuivasa, they reverse position a lot. It might not be the most entertaining thing to go back and watch. I really did like to see that out of Tuivasa to say, okay, this is a guy that was a primary striker against Sergey Spivak. Spivak just took him down. And I think Sergey today could still take Tai Tuivasa down. But with strategic matchmaking, I don't have to worry about that as much against Derrick Lewis. So when it comes down to this fight, if you're really putting in the nuts and bolts and really trying to decipher this one, Tai Tuivasa marches forward. Derrick Lewis baits guys in with counters to knock them out. Tai Tuivasa throws wicked leg kicks. Derrick Lewis stands upright and takes leg kicks and doesn't check them all that great. So, Derrick Lewis, tons of power, improves fight over fight in ways that you might not even be able to quantify, but you know that it's there.
He throws wheel kicks, guys.
He throws wheel kicks, and when he goes forward, which Derrick Lewis will go forward, he throws left high kicks a lot too, which is kind of weird. But when it comes down to this one, if we do have a look at the odds, Lewis open to minus 146 on best fight odds as an average. He's a minus 190. Tai Tuivasa open to plus, we'll call it 125. He's plus 155 right now. Houston at home, over under, Matt. I'm going to say 75% Lewis.
I was going to say that. I'll say over.
Ooh, look at that. 824 total votes, 74% Lewis, 88% by knockout. For the 26% that have Tuivasa, 81% by knockout. I know I set it up very one-sided, which doesn't normally happen with Fight Night picks. I think Derrick Lewis has a great opportunity this weekend to knock out Tai Tuivasa.
And I think he flatlines him. I really do. Tai Tuivasa doesn't accept pressure all that well, and that's what does worry me about this fight for him. When he's moving forward, he is a great striker because he can do everything on his own terms. But if Derrick Lewis does back up Tai Tuivasa at all, we're going to see a very similar fight, I think, to the JDS one. Because Tuivasa, again, when things are on his terms, he can excel in that type of a fight. But when he is the one who sort of has to be... force him to become a cerebral fighter because that's not Tai Tuivasa's sort of factory default mode. I think Derrick Lewis can get the win that way. And here's the thing too. Picked against Derrick Lewis in his last fight. We remember the result of that, so I'm certainly not doing it again.
I had Derrick Lewis to beat Chris Daukaus. I got laughed at by the commenters. But in this fight, I've got Tai Tuivasa. I really do think leg kicks are a major, major factor. And when it comes to the new Tuivasa, yeah, the trouble is when a guy all of a sudden becomes technical and then something goes wrong and we have to change the game plan, usually those people revert to just brawl. And that's not good against a guy like Derrick Lewis, especially when Lewis baits you in, and Tai Tuivasa gets him up against the fence. But again, the flip of the coin, the reason why I have Tuivasa, picking your shots, clinching, making this a little boring, backing up, throwing leg kicks, whipping your wicked left hook out there. I think Tuivasa, especially being a southpaw in this matchup too, poses different problems for Lewis. And listen, Daukaus just marched into those shots.
Here's something that we haven't talked about though. I think Derrick Lewis, and I'm being dead serious, is going to march across the cage and shoot a double leg takedown.
I don't think it's going to happen.
That was his game plan when he fought Francis Ngannou. Like, he went into that fight saying, okay, the second that guy takes a step forward, I'm going to shoot a takedown. It didn't happen, but if there's ever another fight in the UFC to have that type of a game plan, it would be this weekend against Tai Tuivasa.
If that happens, I will shoot hot sauce on the Fight Companion that you can tune into. It's the main card, UFC 271. You can find that here on YouTube. Let us know down below in the comment section who you have in this fight. Matt going with Derrick Lewis. I've got Australia's own Tai Tuivasa representing the South Sydney region. Big time fight coming up, and we also have a big time main event between Robert Whittaker and Israel Adesanya. It's the second fight. Adesanya looking to retain that belt. I can't wait for it. Let's keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.